Welcome into episode 331 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian D. Felice, joined by Bridget Bruin, Scott McLaughlin, and I can't lie. Bridget has this fan going in her room right now, and we were talking about it before, but just going from the intro to now, it's like this fan is blowing. She looks like she's in an music video.
Yeah, Bridget broadcasting from MTV in 1986.
That's right. No, it feels glorious though. It feels great. Actually, before I came on, I decided I needed the fan because I'm wearing. Okay, if you're listening, you can't see this, but I made myself a skate pod shirt that happens to be on a long sleeve. So I had to roll the sleeves up and turn the fan on. Otherwise, I would sweat to death. But I was too proud of my work to not wear it. So I'm doing it for the pod.
Yeah. So I couldn't help but laugh coming in with the glamour shot.
Those who are watching, you're gonna have to get used to it.
Scott's just in his kitchen like normal, just chilling. But in any event, Bridget, Scott, we have ourselves a mailbag episode this week, and thanks everybody for submitting questions. Obviously, off season is a great time for mailbags in particular. So I don't know if you guys want to just kind of jump right into these, but
sure.
If you have any thoughts off the top, but I think we'll just start off right away.
Yeah.
We have an email from Chip, and Chip says, okay, so all of the big moves are done except Swayman. After he signs, then what? Two spots I wonder about are the open top six forward that has been talked about ad nauseum. What about the eighth defenseman? It's not a position to scoff at with most teams typically going 9 deep in a season. Will the Bruins use additional funds left, if there are any, to sign a veteran D-man? Any Providence Bruins defenseman in the system that can do the job? That's pretty much what he's asking. So, Chip, thanks for the question. Scott, Bridget, what do you guys think about a potential veteran defenseman as a depth?
So I think they already have enough guys who can fill potential 8th D spot, which may or may not even be someone who's on the NHL roster, depending on how many guys they actually keep going into the start of the season. But worth noting here, like, so obviously we've talked about the big moves for Lindholm and Zadorov, and even a little bit of Max Jones and Mark Haselick. They did re-sign Ian Mitchell, who obviously played up in Boston last season quite a bit.
But the last game he played with Boston was in December, though. Like the whole second half of the season, he wasn't up. But that was actually a good thing. That just meant they were healthy.
Right. Yeah. And they went out, among the signings that probably flew under the radar because they just weren't as big of names. They signed Jordan Osterley, left shot defenseman who has played 371 NHL games. Again, not someone I would project to make the NHL roster out of camp, but definitely has a lot of NHL experience. Alec Regula had a pretty good season in Providence last year. He did play some NHL games before he came to Boston as part of the Taylor Hall trade. They signed Billy Sweezy, local kid who played at Yale, who has a little bit of NHL experience, 9 games. Beyond that, someone like Mike Callahan, who's been down in Providence, has probably at least developed to a point where I think the Bruins would trust him to not make mistakes at the NHL level. Like, I don't really know how much of a ceiling he has. I don't think it's all that high, but I do think he has a floor where you're at least gonna be able to trust him to play within the system. So,
can I speak to?
Yeah.
Can I speak to him just because I would broadcast his games at Providence when he was there, and also broadcast Billy Sweezy's games too. I would say that Callahan is solid, like he's defensively sound. There's not much to the offensive side of the game, but if you need a guy to just lock it down, he doesn't make a whole lot of defensive mistakes. So, and he's been in Providence for a while, at the Providence Bruins for a while now. He's in general in Providence for longer because he's been in college there as well. But no, I think that he might be someone that they could look to more so than Billy Sweezy, like you mentioned earlier. But sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to input about Callahan.
No, that's pretty much done. I was just going to say, like, those are all guys that if you needed to go down to an 8th or 9th defenseman, you give those guys a look and then reevaluate as you get closer to the trade deadline and decide if you need someone better.
Yeah, and when I first read this question too, my original like thought process was just that it is for sure important to have guys that you can go to when there's injuries. During a playoff run, say you have 2 injuries, you need to worry about that 8th and 9th guy. But I don't think that's where they're going to spend their money. If they have money left over after Swayman, it's probably not going to be a whole lot. And I think they already have a really solid decor and those guys that can plug the third pair holes if you need them to. And then if you want to talk about like the veteran options, I don't think they're bringing back Kevin Shattenkirk, but he was the guy last year. But I don't think it's a huge thing to worry about was my first thing that I thought, because the bigger need is of course the top 6 forward role. And I think the Bruins are pretty solid defensively, even throughout Providence as well. So
in the concept of the idea that teams go 9 defensemen deep and that you're going to be challenged depth-wise on the blue line, that's a very valid concern. It's definitely something we've seen in Boston. I know back in the spring of 2017 when the Bruins played the Senators, it was kind of a bridge year for that Bruins team. Not a ton of hopes in the playoffs. It was their first time back in the postseason in a couple of years, but that blue line was littered with injuries. So it happens, and it's definitely an area that does need to be covered. And you guys talked about some good options. So
also it's kind of hard to sign a veteran D that helps you out, because a lot of times your defensemen, you need to have a certain level of speed still in their game to keep up with some of the younger forwards. So like it would have to be a veteran D that still had more left in the tank, right? Like you can't just sign a veteran guy on like in the very end of his career that he's probably not going to want to just sit out until you need him. Somebody gets injured, and you still want to be able to rely upon them. So I do think that options in Providence are really not bad.
And Scott just mentioned before we started recording this episode that Ryan Suter just signed a deal with the St. Louis Blues. And I mean, I don't know, I guess is Scott, what was the details in his deal again?
Veteran minimum.
1 year, veteran minimum cap hit, $775,000. He can earn up to $3 million with bonuses.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's options like that are out there. Whether or not an individual would like that for the Bruins, I guess it's subjective. But, okay, so moving on down, we have Lee, who emailed us and said that last episode I talked about the Bruins' renewed physicality and an ability to free up skilled players. How much do you think that will resolve last season's issues with closing out games? You're a fan in Vancouver, so Lee is out in the Pacific Northwest there. So thanks, Lee. Scott, do you want to start, or Bridget?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can help, but I don't really think so. Some of those situations involves physicality, right? Like we saw the Bruins blow a couple leads because guys got to the front of the net and got position and were there to tip shots from the point or get rebounds. So in that sense, like Zadorov obviously helps. Like he can help, potentially keep that front of the net clear. What I think is going to help even more in those situations is Elias Lindholm being great on faceoffs and winning key defensive zone draws, which to me was an even bigger problem, was not getting those clutch faceoff wins. And forget even like winning, but not even getting tie-ups on some of them and just giving the other team clean possession right off the draw. Like that's going to happen, I think, significantly less with Elias Lindholm out there.
I do think that part of the physicality that Lee mentions that they've acquired, I do think that does indirectly potentially help closing out games, because you're wearing teams down physically over the course of 60. So maybe they're just a little bit more fatigued, or they're unwilling to go to those dirty areas because you've just been kind of winning those battles more often than not. That is one indirect way I could see specifically having that identity helping. But I think, Scott, you made a great point about Lindholm, and it's those details of the game that really are effective in closing out games.
Yeah, and the first thing that came to mind for me was the net front, which Scott did talk about just cleaning out the net front. Like there was a few times that they blew leads with like under a minute left to go in games last season and the season before, where it just came down to a guy grabbed a rebound and put it in, off the pads of one of the goalies. And obviously you got a guy like Zadorov who's probably going to clean those up a little bit better. And that's one of his skills. But I do like that you brought up the Lindholm part of it, Scott, because the faceoffs, the Bruins struggled with faceoffs ever since, Bergeron and Krejci have been gone. They've been looking for kind of a go-to guy in those situations. Not that Coyle is bad at faceoffs. He's usually pretty good, but it's always nice to just have the options for guys like that to try to win those defensive zone draws and try to get the puck away from your net.
And I think they also, in acquiring Mark Kastelik, you get a guy who's got a career impressive faceoff winning percentage. And then obviously Johnny Beecher is a young player who's good in the circles as well. So hopefully next season, the Bruins up the middle will, be better fitted for situational faceoffs and whatnot. I don't have it up right now. Bridget or Scott, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, I got it. So Kim has a few. These are all mostly related to rookies and young players for the Bruins. So the first part is Kim says, I know the plan is for Lysell or Merkulov to earn the 2 right wing position out of camp. However, what if things go south quickly once the season starts? Do they send them back to Providence and Monty juggles lines until the trade deadline when they can find someone to fill that role? And I think that in my opinion, they want whoever in camp to push for that job. I think they'd love to see Lysell win it, but there's other players in preseason that might force their way into a spot like that. Maybe a Trent Frederick. You don't know. So what do you guys think about the internal possibility of some of the younger guys filling that winger spot on the second line?
Yeah, it's not like the job is going to be wide open for Fabian Lysell or Georgi Merkulov, and it's like, okay, whichever one of you has the better preseason wins it. No, like Morgan Geekie and Trent Frederick, like those guys aren't just going to move out of the way and be like, yeah, no, we're cool just being third liners. Like, here you go, you kids can have second line. Like, no, like they're going to be fighting for it too. So, and
some of those guys have pre-built-in chemistry, right? Like they've played together before.
Right, like Frederick with Coyle. Yeah, so it's like, so if it goes south, meaning like whether it's Lysell, Merkulov, whoever, it's not really working, your second line's not producing, yeah, you're probably just going to have to figure out a way to make it work. Okay, then figure out which line is at least not getting scored on. Start there and then see if they can build from that and start to find some offense. And yeah, you might have to go without until you get closer to the deadline or until someone becomes available in season. We touched on this a little bit last episode, but every team, no one is sitting here right now thinking they have a perfect roster and they have all their holes filled. Like everyone has something that they wish was a little better because that's what happens in a salary cap league. So, I think this Bruins roster is more than good enough to be in the playoffs, in playoff position, not be fighting for their lives. It should be. And as long as you're in that position, yeah, you can try different things until you get closer to the deadline. Even if, you're 12th in the NHL in scoring and you wish you were 5th. Like it's fine. Like there's time to fix that as long as you're not slumping and like suddenly out of the playoffs and then it becomes a little more dire.
Yeah, I mean, Merkulov is going to have a job to work for. Lysell, Scott, as you mentioned, those guys aren't going to get the only looks. You have Geekie, as you mentioned, and Frederick, as you mentioned. There's Justin Brazeau we talked about last episode who, could potentially impress. And the other name as well that comes to my mind potentially is Matt Patra. Now, I know what you're thinking. He's a centerman. I understand that for sure. But I also know that sometimes in the NHL, there's growing pains at the center ice position, and teams will elect to get that player reps at wing because they know he's too valuable to not have in the lineup, especially maybe in a middle top 6 role. And there's also versatility in the Bruins forward, right? So Morgan Geekie could play third line center. Trent Frederick could play third line center. Obviously, we believe that Matt Poitras has that spot certainly to lose, I think. Or I shouldn't say that because, again, players had roles last year when Poitras was out. But in an ideal world, I think everybody would like to see Matt Poitras play that third line center position. But if he doesn't, if he's a little bit behind the 8 ball from his injury or whatnot, and just being a young kid, still 19, 20 years old, maybe he slides over to the wing alongside Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle. My point is there's just options. I'm not predicting the future, but they have options.
Yeah, and he's a good playmaker, right? Poitras, that's one of his main positive attributes is he's kind of like Krejci in that sometimes he knows where guys are, where some players just don't have that ability to read the ice the way that he seemed to come into the league and do. So he's a good playmaker, and he did get played at wing towards the end, right before he got injured and had to leave for the season to get surgery and rehab. But he is an option. Not to get, just because this wasn't the question, but I do have a thought on Poitras. I do think that putting him higher in the lineup, like in a second line role last season, sometimes it felt like he might not have been completely ready for. But if you have him on the third line, centering, and that's his comfortable position, I'd be happy if he started there as well. So, I'm just excited to see him back in the lineup, to be honest. It kind of feels like all we talked about was Matt Poitras for the first few months of the season, or I don't even remember how long it was, but then all of a sudden we didn't talk about him at all. And it'll be nice to see if he got stronger on his skates, like when we see him go back into the real gameplay in preseason, and see what he's improved on, and if he's healthy, and if he's able to now build some chemistry where there had been a little bit with Marchand, or here and there, he didn't have a whole lot of time to get that going, and it kind of felt like we missed out on seeing what could have been a really interesting development for a player. So I'm hoping that this season we get to see that full swing, because he only played 33 games last season. He was on pace for over 50 points in those 33 games. So, you never know with him too. Like you mentioned, Brian, could he end up there? Absolutely. If that's where he fits in and you don't want to take him out of the lineup.
I think it's more like 30, 35 points. But then hit 15. I think it's 15 and 33.
Go back and check.
But yeah, so we kind of answered that ties in a lot to a question Sam sent in, where she brought up Marchand and Poitras seemed to have a little bit of chemistry in the short amount of time they had together last year, and wondered if that was a possibility. And I think we kind of just touched on it, but yeah, it definitely is. Like, I think everything's a possibility because there's no clear answer. And by the way, spoiler alert, like Jim Montgomery's going to change his lines. So even if we don't see it in training camp or preseason, I'm going to say through the first half of the regular season, you're probably going to see just about every line combination you can think of at some point. Like, I bet you will see Poitras with Marchand at some point in there, whether that happens in training camp or preseason or not. Like, at some point it's probably going to happen. I also think you'll see a loaded up top line of Marchand, Lindholm, and Pasternak at some point. Just because we know Montgomery likes to take a look at everything and kind of try everything, at least for a game or two here and there.
By the way, Scott, you're right. My quick mental math was very off. It's not surprising, to be honest with you.
I was gonna say, if you go to school for communications, you don't learn math.
The mental math that I did in about 10 seconds was really not close. So sorry about that. He was on pace for 24 points, which is it's not 50. So that's my bad. Sorry, guys.
I just want to quickly touch on the last question that Kim sent in, and then we'll jump up to Kelly quickly. But Kim asked if Lori will get a fair chance to run the first power play unit, or if that's on lock for McAvoy. I think that Bridget Scott, I don't know how you guys feel about it. I just think when a guy is getting paid $9 million and he's, top 10 defenseman in the league, that he's probably going to get that first look, and maybe they just give Lohrei the reins on the second unit, or if McAvoy just keeps fumbling it, then yeah. But I think to start, at least, I think it's probably, McAvoy's spot.
Yeah. So first off, even Bridget's corrected math is wrong. So
wait, just don't listen to my math.
No.
What's the real number, Scott?
Just so we have it. On an 82 game pace, Patra was on pace for 37 points.
That's all right. It was
so right in between the two.
Okay, yeah.
It's a sweatshirt.
Sorry.
It's cutting out. The sweatshirt's cutting off circulation to the brain.
Just move the decimal point. I don't know. It's all. I don't know. I wasn't a math major. Okay.
The fan has blown Bridget's brain around.
It's gone. Whatever was even there to begin with.
Yeah. So on the power play, Brian, I'm totally with you. Like, I think if nothing else, out of respect to Charlie McAvoy as one of your team leaders, he's gonna start the season on the top unit and get a chance to show, because I do think it's something that, hopefully they kind of in their end of season meetings talked about, and hopefully it's something that McAvoy focuses on this summer. And I realize there's only so much you can do in that respect over the summer. That's probably more of a get into training camp and work on it with the actual power play unit. But, so hopefully it's something he's focused on, because it's an area where there's clearly still room for his game to grow, and an area where he can start to rack up some more points as we talk about, what's sort of the next step in his career. And yeah, there's obviously, you can look for like more consistency all over the ice, but like, I still don't feel like he's fully topped out offensively. Like, I do still think there's more there, with the power play being the most obvious spot where I do still think he can grow. So you give him that chance, and then if you get going into the season and McAvoy's struggling on the top unit and Lohrai's doing a great job with the second unit, okay, then that becomes a conversation, and that's something you consider.
Yeah, I mean they're going to start with McAvoy for sure, but we did see sometimes where McAvoy, not that it was only his fault, but when the power play wasn't going, there was an obvious need for somebody up there to have the next move, the right move to make, to try to help things along and get better chances and set up better shots. So Lohrei, I think we all really were impressed with the way that his season turned out and the way he stuck and some of his offensive abilities. But I don't think we're at that point yet where it's like, okay, McAvoy slide over. Mason Lohrei is coming in to take the top power play quarterback position.
Okay, moving along to Kelly, who says, just wanted to start by saying you guys do a great job. Each of you leave a different perspective, like Bridget's math. No, that was added in from I'm sorry, Bridget, that was mean.
Next mailbag, people will send me math equations that I have to try to solve. But
I mean, look, we're gonna have to fill some content here during the summer. So
just send me some math. Yeah, it won't go well if you want to just have a good laugh.
What did I leave off? Okay, I'm old school, so I love Brian's take on our toughness. It was nice to see his screen not freeze up. Must have paid his Wi-Fi bill. Oh, so Kelly's chirped me a little bit.
Shots fired. Yeah, she chirped you. I was reading that earlier when I was going through these, and I was like, oh man, shots fired at Brian. Did you pay your internet bill?
So so first of all, Kelly, that genuinely is a hilarious chirp. But I do want to clarify. So my Wi-Fi at home is great. I do pay the Wi-Fi bill. What happens is once in a while I have to record from my day job, and the Wi-Fi, there's so many Wi-Fi networks that it just kicks me off of what I'm on to a different one, and it's just an issue. And I do hotspot, and that kicks me off of that. So I'm just
which we still don't know what his day job is, and we prefer to keep it that way. It's the mystery of it all.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Scott probably has like a decent guess at what it is. I feel like you can probably.
Yeah, I try to
contextualize. It's
not. I
that
try to not
confusing.
pry. I try not to ask questions. I just want to leave it up.
I've made comments over the years about different things, but whatever. Construction manager, I guess. I'll just leave. I guess I'll put it out there. Project manager for construction projects. I'll put it out there.
All right, so you're not a plumber.
No, not a plumber. Although I do believe that plumbers, they got some good benefits. I do believe, and their toilets are always perfect. So, all right, where were we on this question? My God. Sorry, Kelly. Okay, this team is built for the playoffs, not regular season. So it's more of a comment than a question. Did not like the Allmark trade at first, but starting to come around. I think Kastelic will be a nice fit on the fourth line. I couldn't watch Maroon any longer. Just too slow. Keep up the great work, Kelly. North Vancouver, home of Bedard and Celebrini. So that's 2 Vancouver questions. Hopefully Lee and Kelly can meet up and watch the Bruins game.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need like a meetup, like the Bruins fans, skate pod fans that are in Vancouver.
We need a skate pod road trip. I've never been to Vancouver.
That'd be great. I'm always down for a road trip. You know that.
I guess I'll just kind of twist Kelly's submission into saying, like, are the Bruins, asking you guys, are the Bruins, is this team built better for the playoffs? I mean, it's obviously, we won't know until next spring. I think on paper we all are in agreement here.
Yeah, I do think so. And I think the note about like Kastelic on the fourth line, Maroon being gone, I think clearly the Bruins have kind of turned the page on, I don't want to be disrespectful, but slower veterans. I mean, Maroon, they move on from, they bring in, physical fourth liners who can bring some of the same things, but who have more speed, like Max Jones, like Mark Kastelic. James Van Riemsdyk is still a free agent. I guess in theory can't be ruled out as we talk about the Bruins looking for more offense from, cheap sources. But seems like they're probably moving on from him. It definitely looked like down the stretch, Van Riemsdyk was struggling to keep up at times, and obviously his late season illness was part of that. So I don't want to, totally bury him. We already touched on Kevin Shattenkirk again. Like, I think the Bruins liked a lot of what Kevin Shattenkirk brought, and I guess I still wouldn't slam the door shut on him being like the 8th defenseman. Although I think it's unlikely, but kind of follows the same lines of like, that's someone who, at this stage in his career, at times struggled to keep up. Moving on from Derek Forbort, we know, his mobility limitations. Like, Cam Neely said they need to get faster. And I know people sort of pushed back a little bit on that because they were like, okay, you need to get faster, but you let Jake DeBrusk go and he was one of your fastest skaters. Like, but I think overall, I do think that the team's speed is up. Like, I think there aren't really any spots on the roster now where you look at it and you go like, oh, they're slow there. Everyone is at least like a pretty decent skater. So I think overall they probably did get faster on the whole, even if they didn't like go out and get, some burner that people might have been expecting.
Now Scott's internet's breaking up. And so Kelly, it was Scott that didn't pay this month. So maybe you could help us. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
Scott, you got my office right now?
Yeah, I moved in.
That's new. So
no internet, but pretty good AC. No.
There you go. But to go back to like your summarized version, Brian, of what the question really is, it's hard to imagine that they would be that they're worse off than they were for the playoffs this year than last year, right? Like this year, you have another guy who can win those face-off battles. You have an additional scorer. I know you lose DeBrusk, but Elias Lindholm is going to produce offense, whether it's setting it up or putting the puck in the back of the net. Another one of his skills, too, that the more I go back and watch some of his highlights is just his ability to break things out. So carry it from the back end all the way to the offensive zone or make the right pass out of the D zone. So that all helps you in the playoffs. And then Zadorov's size and also ability to break the puck out simply definitely feels like you're better built for the playoffs. And like you mentioned, the guys, the older veterans that were on the team that looked a little bit slow are not on the Bruins anymore. As of right now, Shattenkirk is not there. Van Riemsdyk is not there. Forbert is not there. And but by the way, he is in Vancouver now. So Kelly, he's coming to your neck of the woods up in Vancouver, though you might not be, a Canucks fan. I don't know. Maybe you hate the Canucks. But yeah, I think that they are better equipped as of right now with the personnel that they have to compete with some of the teams that have given them trouble, including the Florida Panthers.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next, I'm going to combine a couple of questions here because they're kind of related. I think they kind of feed each other. So, the second part of Sam's question, I know Scott brought up her first question a little bit ago, but if all goes according to plan, the Bruins roster will have a higher number of younger players / rookies than last year. We're looking at Lohrei, Beecher, Patra, Lysell, possibly Merkulov. How do you see Montgomery handling this? Will Sweeney force Monty to just let them play and learn as they go, or will Montgomery continue to give them a short leash if they make mistakes? And I'm going to combine that with a comment we got on YouTube from @Bruins77_7. Montgomery played a lot of veterans last year. Basically, we had 2.5 lines, whether it was because of penalty kill or not trusting youngsters. Coyle, Pasternak, Zacha, Marsh, and McAvoy all ran out of gas at the end. In order to go far in the playoffs, you need to roll all 4 lines. Do you realistically think we have that this year? So, Bridget, Scott, I guess just to kind of summarize the 2 questions, do the Bruins need more than just their veteran players to succeed in the postseason? And if they have those younger players to complement their veterans, will Montgomery allow them to, go through some growing pains while not limiting too much ice time?
So kind of a couple tiers to this. First off, I'm going to push back a little bit on the idea that you have to be able to roll 4 lines. I think you have to have 4 lines that you can trust and that serve a purpose. But just about every team, cuts down on, shortens the bench in big games in the third period. So you don't necessarily need to have 12 forwards that you can put on the ice in a 1-goal game with 4 minutes to go. Like it's okay to lean on veterans. I don't really think their guys got worn down, honestly. Like some of them underperformed for sure in the playoffs. And I think Coyle and Zacha in particular kind of being asked to do probably more than they really should be asked to do as centers. I think that caught up with them, but I don't think it was like a physical thing of they were worn down and tired. So how does that play out? And do they, does Montgomery like let them make mistakes or whatever? That's going to depend on where the team is. Like, I don't think you're going to see that much early in the season because you want to make sure that you're getting yourself in playoff position. Like you can't just risk losing games just so you get, young kid X experience. And that was my feeling last year. It's why I never really had an issue with like Patra or Beecher or whoever sitting in the third period because I don't take points and I don't take a playoff spot for granted. And by the way, this year you're not going to have a number 2 goalie who is also capable of stealing games for you. So you're probably going to drop some points that you would have gotten last year. So yeah, at some point, like if you're comfortable in the standings, sure, let a Fabian Lysell play and potentially make some mistakes. But in general, no, you're trying to win a Stanley Cup. Like I don't think you have to just give young kids like a ton of leash and let them make mistakes. Like, no, this is different than a rebuilding team that can let kids do that.
Yeah, and to the point about having to roll 4 lines and shorten, like you said, Scott, shortening the bench sometimes is the smart thing to do late in a game where you're trying to get those points, even in a regular season game, early in the season. If you're just trying to put together the best game plan, sometimes you you take one guy, out of the rotation, or you take two and you still use one of the fourth liners in a situational role. Like you need Beecher to take a face off, or you need somebody out there that's fast, and you rotate them. You're rotating, and it's not necessarily you don't roll the line. Like you're rolling certain guys, switching them in and out. And if a guy sits the whole third period, sometimes it has nothing to do with them being a bad player, but maybe you're needing a more defensive style game, or the game calls for something that player doesn't necessarily bring. So the needs change. And in the playoffs, obviously you do not want guys to get worn out like that. And wear and tear a lot of times doesn't necessarily have to do with rolling four lines as much as it does, minutes per game and recovery. And there's a lot of things that go into getting burnt out that doesn't necessarily have to do with, one period where guys are sitting a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there is something to you do need to have as much depth as possible in the postseason, and that means having players that are ready to play those minutes. And I think that if the Bruins have a roster designed where you have a handful of younger players, the only way you learn is by doing. You can sit there and you can be sat, you can be taught a hard lesson, go to the ninth floor, but ultimately you do have to learn on the ice. And I think that there's a fine line between just giving them too much leash and it's at the same time not giving them any leash. I think it's a happy medium. And I think if you look at, like, even if your top players don't get worn out, like, your top players are not going to score every single game in the postseason. You need everybody to pull on the rope. There might be some players like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl who average a point per game in the postseason or more, but a lot of those points are coming in the same game. If you look at the Florida Panthers in the last Stanley Cup Finals, Sam Reinhart scored the series-winning, Stanley Cup-winning goal in the second period of Game 7 after a 57-goal regular season, but that was his first goal of the finals. Evan Rodriguez had a big finals for the Panthers. Carter Verhaeghe. Go BU, go Terriers. Carter Verhaeghe is another big goal scorer for the Panthers. He had a quiet finals until the last game or two. So you need everybody to score big goals at different times. And I just think, I'm not trying to have a cop-out answer. You just have to find that balance of teaching hard lessons, but then allowing players to learn, even if it costs you a couple plays here and there.
And to be clear, like, and when we're talking about like guys being burnt out, Scott, you were there too. Like, some of the players, and Brian deleted the question already, so I couldn't go back and see all, because I think there was 5 names there. Like, I don't think Pasternak was burnt out. I don't think that McAvoy was burnt out. Like, there was guys I was watching, and some of the mistakes, or the lack of scoring doesn't always necessarily attribute to being burnt out by that point in the season. Obviously, there's some fatigue there, but like Marchand was dealing with injury, which also I would categorize as different than burnout. Like, burnouts to me means you kind of got worn to the ground when you should have been resting. You weren't. But obviously, we know how it turned out, and they didn't have enough in the tank, so to speak. But a lot of that came with just not being able to match their opponent, which Florida did a really good job at nullifying some of those good players. So I don't think that Pasternak, and Scott, you might disagree, but did you think that any of those players that were listed really seemed to be burnt out?
No, not really. And just like a couple final thoughts from me here. Like, Marchand is the one that I would look to this season for, is there going to be a little more load management? He played all 82 games for the first time in his career last year and played just over 19 minutes per game. Like, he's going to be 36 this season. Don Sweeney told us he had some sort of cleanup after the season. So, as Bridget alluded to, there was some injury situation or wear and tear. Nothing serious. Like, he's going to be ready for camp and all that. But that is one, and that has to come from Montgomery. Like, that has to be a conscious effort, because Brad Marchand himself is never going to load manage himself. So, I do wonder about that a little bit. And my last thought here is specifically to the dynamic of Sweeney and Montgomery. And I think part of Sam's question was, will Sweeney force Montgomery to play the kids more? I don't think you can if you're the GM. I think you have conversations and you go over plans and you talk about, this is what we want to see from this kid. We think Patra can handle a little bit more of this or that this year. You talk about all that stuff, but once the GM starts inserting himself into in-game decisions and trying to force the coach's hand, you start to ruin a relationship really quickly. And Sweeney, to my knowledge, has never really done that, and I don't think he'll start
now.
No.
Yeah, no, I'm with you guys on that. I'm with you. So we talked about this for a second last episode. We didn't even give any analysis on it, so I guess we can do that now.
There's a reason we didn't, but like I'm perfectly happy to go into why it's crazy, but go ahead, Brian, read it and then we'll go through it.
I mean, like, it's not yeah. Okay. So at Bruin 88 asked us to give our analysis on this possible trade rumor that he heard or she heard on another site.
I can't believe David Pasternak wrote us about this.
Which, by the way, like this is a question that we got, but I also was texted by multiple people. Is this real? Like, for certain people, it it's hard to decipher. Like,
if
what
it's on the internet, it's real.
No, yeah. But that's obviously not true. But there's been rumors about Trouba going around, a lot of rumors about him going around. This one just to me immediately seemed crazy, but to some people it's like, okay, maybe this is real because there's been other rumors related to Trouba. So anyway, read it.
The world's biggest cliffhanger here. So the rumors are, or I shouldn't say rumors, but yeah, whatever. Okay, the trade in question is Brandon Carlo, Johnny Beecher, 2027 second round pick to the Rangers for Jacob Trouba, Matt Rempe, 2027 third round, and 2026 sixth round picks. Rangers seem intent on dealing Trouba, and with both him and Rempe added to the Bruins, they are a lot tougher and more ornery. I would do it only if the Rangers agree to retain at least 20% of Trouba's salary, which is 1.6 or whatever. That would be 1.6 million. If they don't, you have to walk away because Swayman still isn't signed and he has to be the number one priority right now. The Bruins don't have enough cap space otherwise. So yeah, like, I don't know where this singular rumor stemmed from. There are a lot of things at play here as to why logistically it probably doesn't make sense. I guess Scott. Bridget,
can I start with this because I went through it as much as I could so that we could give like a full answer besides just saying this is crazy. So this morning I was just looking at like the logistics of it. Cap wise is really like you're trading a guy in Brendan Carlo because obviously Trouba's a defenseman, Carlo's a defenseman. There's a defenseman going both ways there, and then there's a fourth liner going both ways there, and for some reason there's draft picks too. I don't even know if we need to get into that part. But Carlo's cap hit is $4.1 million. And even with your, subtracting some of Trouba's $8 million cap hit, you're still not even close to what Carlo's cap hit was. So it just wouldn't work, especially when you consider the amount that Swayman we think will sign for. There wouldn't be cap space for it. Also, there's a reason why they're trying to get rid of their captain, and he's fallen down in the Rangers depth chart. Whereas I think that everybody here in Boston knows that Brendan Carlo is a pretty solid defenseman, and we already know that the Bruins D-core, as it currently stands, is one of the best in the league. So, you're tinkering in a D-core that's not really your issue right now. And I don't think you need to add Matt Rempe, and I don't think Matt Rempe is better than Johnny Beecher. So why would you be swapping those two fourth liners? I don't get it. The whole premise of this, I don't understand. The draft picks, like the Bruins are giving a second round pick, which is the higher pick in this situation. Like, I don't understand any aspect of this trade because of personnel that they already have personnel that they don't need. Like Matt Rempe is just like, for lack of a better term, he's just a goon. Like he's big and he's entertaining, but he other than that doesn't really add all that much to your team. And the era of the goon is behind us. Besides these like one-off situations where I don't think Matt Rempe is really moving the needle on you winning a Stanley Cup, because you put him in and you never know if he's going to help or hurt more than he helps, which it seems like based on skill would be the case. Sorry guys. That was what I prepared to say in response to what I think is absolutely an absurd rumor that I don't think Don Sweeney is dumb enough to even consider any of that.
Yeah, you covered it well from the Bruins side, and I agree with all that, so I won't rehash it. I don't think it makes sense from the Rangers side either, because all the talk has been, if they're trading Trouba, it's because they want to upgrade up front. Well, this trade doesn't do that. Like, it's a like for like trade, as you said, like right defense for right defense, fourth line for fourth line. Like that's not the deal that the Rangers would be looking for either. To add some actual reporting to this, because I have not seen anyone credible actually like report anything about this even being a possibility or even being discussed. But as it relates to Trouba, I did see Emily Kaplan was on TSN earlier this week and reported that Jacob Trouba actually blocked a trade to Detroit. That on July 1st, his no trade clause went from full no trade down to a 16-team list. And the Rangers apparently had a deal in place with Detroit, and they were one of the teams that Trouba had on his no trade list, and he did not waive. And she added that at this point, it seems likely that he's going to stay with the Rangers, because it doesn't seem likely that they're going to be able to find a trade that makes sense. So him getting traded, period, seems unlikely. And this particular rumor involving the Bruins is especially unlikely.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's hard to trade anyone that has an $8 million cap hit. That you don't oftentimes see teams trying to trade their captain. And so, something has to have gone pretty wrong for a team to be trying to shed the contract of their captain. And usually that means you're going to have to give up more than you get back. And like you said, he can block trades to half the teams in the league. And I don't know if you've seen his artwork. That was one of the first things I thought of. I was like, maybe if he's here, he can hang some of his artwork in the Boston Museum of Arts or give us an excuse to take a road trip over there and look at his paintings that are just him dipping himself in paint and running into a wall. I don't know if you've seen those. No art connoisseurs.
I've seen them. Yeah.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
So, but maybe that makes up for it if he includes some of the paintings in the deal. Those would probably go for quite a bit of money. So, Brian's not having any of it.
No,
just I guess let's have a little fun with the question though. So let's just hypothetically take all things considered equal, take the contracts aside, the no moves aside. Would you even do a Carlo Trouba swap 1-for-1 hypothetically? Because I would not. I understand the and again the reason, like, the contracts are what they are. Like, I'm saying just a fun discussion. Like I wouldn't, and I understand why people like what Trouba brings. I know Rangers fans are super down on him. He definitely has that element of, like, you gotta have your head up when you're on the ice with them, and I think there's merit to that in a postseason run. But I mean, Brandon Carlo, Trouba's the Rangers captain. Brandon Carlo is obviously Brad Marchand is Boston's captain, but Brandon Carlo is he the longest tenured Bruin outside of Marchand? Or is it Pasternak? It might be Pasternak at this point.
Pasta, yeah.
Okay, but he's been around for a long time. He's an absolute leader for this Bruins team, and defensively, I admire his defensive work more than Trouba's anyway. So
3 years younger, like 3 years younger, big, meshes well with the defensemen that he's been paired with here that are still remain here. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me, any of it. Like, I think people just like to include Matt Rempe into conversations, just like throw him into like, okay, Bruins should get Rempe. Like, oh, the Bruins need to get tougher. Throw Rempe in.
Well, and it's funny because it's like the Bruins clearly have gotten tougher and more physical this offseason, but it's like now that people just want overkill. Like they just want like an 18-man lineup of guys just running around like chickens with their head cut off, hitting everything that moves. And it's like, yeah, they might lose every game 6-1, but man, if they land 120 hits a game, like who cares?
I will say though, just quickly in defense of Rempe, like I'm not gonna lie, I haven't watched him. I obviously saw the headlines. I saw his lack of minutes in New York, and I know that he was more of a headline than anything last year. He's young. I mean, you don't know. He could end up being more than just a goon. Like he could be a decent fourth liner that like can chip in. I don't really know. I'm not saying one way or the other. I just don't know enough about him.
When both of your eyes are sealed shut because you took too many punches to the face, it's really hard to play a game.
For sure.
When your nose is broken and your jawbone and everything.
I think he was inappropriately handled by the Rangers last year and kind of throwing him out to the Wolves. Like there was a stretch of time where he fought like Reeves and Olivier in Columbus and Delorier in Philly in like a 2-week stretch. It's like you don't send an 18, 19, however old he is, kid out there to take on the league's toughest in like a 2-week stretch for headlines or for morale.
I think that's what he wanted to do, to be honest with you. Like he seemed like a very willing participant in all of it. And sometimes like when you talk to Sean Thornton and you listen to some of the things he said about his career, sometimes you go in there and you do what you have to make it to the NHL. And this kid has a dream to be in the NHL. And that's where he differs from other people. He's massive and he can fight. So you use the skills that you have. And it seems like he's not afraid to shy away from it. So I don't really see a pathway for him to stay in the league based on skill. And I'm not trying to be mean about that at all, but like, this is the skill set that he has that's NHL caliber, whereas the rest of it probably isn't.
Well, it was funny. Like you'd see even in the play, because like he played a little bit in the playoffs and you'd see him make a couple plays where you're like, yeah, like that's NHL caliber. And it would get like celebrated. Like he just was like Ovechkin going coast to coast and scoring from his back, like as he's falling down. And it's like, yeah, all he did was like take a puck off the boards and make a clean pass 5 feet away. And,
you mean like getting cheered?
Like, and like the announcers would be like, see, there's more to Rempe's game than just hitting. Like, look at this pass, and it's like a 5-foot pass that
it should be pretty.
Can make.
It should be pretty obvious that a guy's not going to make it to the NHL if he can't pass the puck. Like, right? They're not just picking the biggest thug that any of us know off the street and putting him in skates. Like the people who are, and once again, I'm gonna use the word goons, but like people in that role in the league, they can do those things right. Otherwise, they would never be considered to step on the ice in the first place. So there's other complementary things, but it's not like, and he did score, but it's not. Anyway, why are we talking about Matt Rempe this morning?
Yeah, so to circle back to the other part of the deal, because Brian, I didn't answer your 1-for-1 question. In a vacuum, I might trade Carlo for Trouba. Like, I do think you could clean up Trouba's defense a little bit, and he does bring more offense, and he is more physical. But if I'm the Bruins with the lineup I have constructed, I would not, because like as you were describing Trouba's game, it's like, who does that sound like? It kind of sounds like Nikita Zadorov.
Exactly.
And I think with the way the rest of this defense is assembled, having the stability and consistency and reliability of Carlo next to a Zadorov who can be a little bit of a wild card at times, or next to a Lohrei who is still developing, I like that more than Trouba, who can be his own wild card sometimes.
Yeah, exactly, Scott. That's exactly why. That was the biggest reason why I wouldn't want to do that hypothetically 1-for-1 either, because literally exactly what you just said. Yeah, Bridget, we can move on from the Matt Rempe question. Trying to see what was
I got it up.
Okay.
So there's some quicker ones that we can answer here towards the end. We have one from, I believe this is YouTube, a question about a prospect that the Bruins have, and it's from Minion SLW333. Where do you see Don Schmellis?
Big week for Minions, right?
Minions.
New Despicable Me movie out?
Yeah, Minions. Oh, wait, I think I read this wrong. Minions LW333. So is that Minions? He's a left winger and his number is 333. I don't know. The question. Okay, that's what I'm going with. It's where do you see Dan Schmellis fitting in? And for people who don't know who that is, Schmellis is a Bruins prospect currently playing for UMass Amherst, 4th round draft pick, 3 drafts ago now. And I don't know how much you guys have seen of him. I obviously deal with Hockey East a lot, so I've seen a little bit, but he's only gone through his freshman season at UMass. He played for the Latvia national team, which we saw, we watched him in World Juniors a little bit with that. I don't really know if I have a full answer. It's too soon to say for me. Where does he fit in? Because he had an okay freshman season. I wouldn't say like he's one of the guys that I'm watching in college hockey that the Bruins have drafted that I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy, we need to figure out like where he's going to go. He has, there's attributes to his game that are good that, it's just, to me, it's too soon to say. He's going to be a sophomore next season. He comes from, like I said, Latvia, like hit the international play we've seen a little bit of, which sometimes gives you a little bit of an idea what he could be like against, say, like the U.S. national team, the Canadian national team, like peers, how well he plays against them. But Scott, I know you follow Hockey East a little bit.
Yeah, and not just international play against his age group, but he's played for Latvia's varsity team in the last 2 World Championships against NHLers, which is really valuable experience. And he's been towards the top of the lineup even on that team. And not this spring, but the previous World Championship, he was part of a team that became national heroes in Latvia because they won a bronze medal, and it was Latvia's first ever IIHF medal. Yeah. So that's just like a really cool life moment for him. Yeah, where he fits in like this year, hopefully on UMass's first or second line. Like, that's where I want to see him. I want to see him move up UMass's lineup. It is interesting. So I actually
and Greg Carvel's a good coach, right? Like we like Greg Carvel. We like the players that he's turned out. Kill McCarr. But obviously that's a very unique situation. But he's a guy that was formerly on the coaching staff in the NHL. He's good at developing players. So there's a lot of development left to do. But I think he's in a good system to do it. That being said, to me, he's only a sophomore, like going into sophomore year. So it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah. I actually asked Adam McQuaid about Schmellis last week at development camp and thought it was interesting. He said he's a player that McQuaid could see making a Jelvik-like jump from freshman to sophomore year, referring to another Bruins prospect, Oscar Jelvik, who went from pretty similar stat line as a freshman, about half a point per game. Schmellis, I think, was 14 in 30 games. To Jelvik as a sophomore, going up over a point per game, just over a point per game. Now, I don't think Schmellis will do that because he's not going to have Cutter Gauthier on his line. But, if he can jump up to like 30-point area, like double his point total, that would be really encouraging. His season got delayed last year because he'd actually played 2 professional games in Sweden, which comes with you have to sit out. I forget exactly how many games it was because of the NCAA bylaws and all that crap. So that's not ideal for a freshman to have to miss basically the first month of your season. Yeah.
All that crap.
like, yeah, 2 games, like, really?
Yeah.
Like,
No,
you have to miss
I've
a month
seen
because of 2 games?
I've seen a lot. I've seen guys get fined for all sorts of stupid things, and some of the rules just don't make any sense to me. Let me just put it that way. Without getting into specifics, it's like these kids get punished for stuff that's just ridiculous, and it's crazy. So like, you even might have to do community service for like some of these things. It's insane. But yeah, so I think that's probably the end of our answer on Leishmalis. Brian, thoughts? No.
No, I mean you guys hit it. It's one of those things where it's Scott, as Scott said, where does he fit in? It's UMass Amherst, and like any prospect, really, where they fit in is up to the player. If you're the Bruins right now, you're just kind of like, I don't even know if he's on the radar of Don Sweeney. It's like it's more of like Adam McQuaid and his team to keep track of these players and their development. And if anybody's popping off, then obviously his ears will perk up. But right now he's not even really on. Yeah, prospects, like it's incumbent upon the prospects to make the team that drafted them, really notice them. So right now it's kind of just like status quo. We'll see what happens down the line.
And I'll just put it this way: plenty of Bruins prospects in Hockey East. If you want to, go see a game, listen to the broadcast, you might hear me. They're all around Hockey East, including Dean Letourneau, who was just drafted and going to be going to BC. So I'm going to go to this question, guys, because this one we might be our last one, and maybe a quick answer for the other one that I saw. But this is from
we get
Twitter.
2 more. We'll get to both of them.
Yeah. So Twitter, Candy asked us or said, you guys spent a lot of time in episode 330 discussing Zadorov. I like the signing and know he brings size and toughness to the Bruins that the Bruins desperately need. But if he's such a great asset, then why is he now with his 6th team in his 10-year NHL career? So I kind of like went back today and looked through like, how did he end up with all 6 teams, and what was his trajectory? And I don't know if you guys have any initial thoughts, but I did kind of like go through it.
So let's just talk it through real quick. And it's a very good question. So I want to say his in order, it was Colorado, right?
Started at Buffalo.
No.
Was he in Buffalo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. You got, so like, this is where, to Bridget's point, this is why it's worth going like place by place.
Yeah.
Wow.
He gets traded from Buffalo to Colorado as part of the Ryan O'Reilly trade.
Yes.
And he was one of the centerpiece young players that Colorado acquired in that deal. So, like, that's not a knock against him. Colorado valued him in a blockbuster trade.
Yeah, it was a huge trade. So, like, to start with that was in 2015, and that happened June 26th, so like right as the offseason started. He was part of that trade. He was the big piece that went to the Avs, like you said, Scott. It was Ryan O'Reilly and Jamie McGinn, two established NHLers going to Buffalo in that trade. And then he was with the Avs for 5 years. They were all short contracts though. So he was with them from 2015 to 2020. He had 2 contract extensions in that time. Ended up the highest salary he had there was $3.2 million, but they liked him enough to keep upping him, extending him. So he was there for 5 years, and that's something to take into consideration. And then because of those short contracts, though, like, you're always at a point where a team's going, can we get value for him? Should we trade him at the deadline? Should we trade him in the offseason before we lose him and get nothing? So the teams are considering, do we let him go to free agency, or do we want to get something for him? And it seems to me like that's what happened to him a lot was on an expiring contract, he gets bounced around. And now he finally goes to free agency and probably gets the money that he deserves. This is the biggest contract he's ever had with the Bruins. But if you want, I can go through more of those stepping stones, or Scott, you can go through it.
Yeah, I have him here. So Colorado to Chicago was his next stop. That was in a trade for Brendan Saad. So that was a hockey trade. Chicago gets a defenseman. Colorado gets a forward. He's in Chicago, I think, for only 1 year. His contract was up. I don't think he was going to re-sign there. Calgary acquires his negotiating rights ahead of free agency for a 3rd-round pick. So that's a team wanting him, and they do end up signing him. 2 years later, he requests a trade out of Calgary because they're rebuilding, and he gets it to Vancouver, a team that was obviously a playoff team. And he shed some light on that when he talked to media on Monday, and said that his main focus at this point is winning a championship, and basically straight up said he didn't want to be part of a rebuild. He wasn't going to re-sign in Calgary, so that worked out for everyone. Calgary got something in return for a guy who wasn't going to stay beyond last season.
I'm just shocked. I can't remember him ever wearing a Sabres uniform. And I know it was a decade ago, but that just blows my mind. I thought he picked up in Colorado, but clearly he didn't. But you guys laid it out perfectly. It's not a situation of him being a suitcase where like teams just, don't really, everywhere he's gone has been like either his decision to leave via free agency. And like his quick stop in Chicago, as Scott mentioned, like it sounds, like he was traded towards the end of his Colorado contract. So, it's a timing thing. It's not because the player isn't an asset to the teams he's on. It's just kind of been a perfect storm, if you will, for why he's been on so many teams in such a, well, I guess call it a decade, right? So,
yeah. So like, I guess the only concern of like how that plays here is, if you go into a rebuild, what do you want out? Well, obviously the Bruins have no plans to go into a rebuild anytime soon, so hopefully you don't have to figure that out. But by all accounts, he's like everywhere he's been, people have spoken highly of him. Like he's widely considered a good locker room guy. His teammates in Vancouver loved him. Like if people heard any interviews, with some of the guys there, like JT Miller was very vocal about wanting both Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov to stay, which for cap reasons wasn't entirely realistic. And obviously those players wanted to test the market, and ultimately both wanted to go to Boston. So, that's a credit to you. Like they were in a place that wanted them, at least in terms of the guys on the team. But they chose to go test free agency and come to Boston instead.
Yeah. So I know a lot of times, like the more teams a guy's been on does indicate something negative, but I don't think in this case it does, because he hasn't found, I mean, I shouldn't say that the Avs was in the right situation, but like once that situation ended, since then, he hasn't really found it yet. And what he was looking for was, first of all, a payday, which he gets with Boston. He's getting more money now than he's gotten in his career. He gets a more secure, longer-term contract, which he also hasn't had in his career. And the reason why he was moved in trades was because he had value. So, like, those are not negative things.
Yeah, and I'm just looking up the Bruins roster right now, and this thought just crossed my mind because I'm thinking back to when he broke into the league in 13-14, was a decade ago. So maybe Charlie Coyle, but it seems like outside of Brad Marchand, Nikita Zadorov he may be the longest tenured NHL player on the roster right now, outside of Marchand and maybe Coyle, maybe Lindholm, maybe Hampus Lindholm, that is.
Yeah, he was probably starting just around then.
Huh. Wow. We have one more question left, guys. If you want to just get to that, we can move on.
Yeah. So I have it up. Oh, you got it. Okay. Yeah.
So Nathan on Twitter, how do we feel about Daniel Sprong to fill that second line right wing? He might be right in the price range, depending on what Swayman signs for. Would be a nice middle six for us. So a lot of questions about his defensive capabilities, but if you're talking pure offense and at the right price, if there's money left over, I mean, like he can definitely provide some offensive pop in the maybe 30 to 40 point range. I don't have his numbers up in front of me, but I just think it's a matter of defensive fit. He's a player that's bounced around quite a bit.
Yeah, he has. Never really more than 2 years in any one stop, but after some disappointing seasons the last 2 years, he's showing some real signs of like starting to find his game at age 25, 26. He's now 27. 2 years ago in Seattle, he had 21 goals, 46 points. Last year in Detroit, 18 goals, 43 points. He has a good shot. He's a good skater. Brian mentioned there are defensive concerns. I would not at all mind taking a flyer on him. And, if he comes in like $1 million, $1.5 million for 1 year, absolutely. I don't really think that's a second line solution. I mean, maybe he like truly breaks out and does play there, but I would think of that more as like a bottom six guy with a little more pop than maybe some other guys you have down there. There's a reason, look at his ice time totals. He's generally 12, 13, maybe 14 minutes a game. Like it's not top 6 minutes, and I don't really think he'd hold up super well in more minutes. But I absolutely don't mind taking a flyer on him because there is some real offensive ability there.
Yeah, and you can take the flyer on him because he's a free agent and he hasn't signed with anybody yet. So to me, I like my first thought was that not a fit for the top six, like you just mentioned, Scott. His last contract was a two-way contract, $2 million for 1 year with Detroit. You'd want to get him for less than that, right? Like $2 million would be probably an overpay for him at this point. For what you need him to do, or not for what you need him to do, but what he probably can do and what he's probably worth. So, and in the numbers, Brian, from last season, he had 43 points in 76 games. So, I mean, that's not nothing.
No,
but it's a weird fit. Like, it's not that he's a bad player, but I'm curious how this thought popped into your mind, Nathan. Like Daniel Sprong, like where it came from, I'm not 100% sure, but like it's an interesting thought because you're right, the price could be there, but the fit is something that I'm not 100% sure on.
Well, I think Nathan's looking at the team he follows probably and seeing an opening and a player who's available. That to your guys' point, he has put up over 40 points in a few seasons here. Like he's just under a point per game. I'm sorry, I do that all the time. He's just under half a point per game player in his NHL career.
It's okay. This podcast is not.
No,
like it's not. There's no.
We'll leave that to Scotty. We're
gonna get a fourth member on here that can just like correct our math.
Guys, I gotta say, if I'm the best at math in any group, that is really sad.
Listen, I think my brain deleted it. I have to remember a lot of hockey names and different things and facts, and I think my brain just deleted how to do basic math. I don't know. It got rid of it.
I will say just quickly on his defensive deficiencies. Like sometimes you go to a situation where there's a culture and you kind of mold into what is in place. I think for me, I kind of just feel like I kind of want to see if Merkulov and Lysell can grab hold of an opportunity. My desire to see if those guys can win a job potentially is a little bit higher than going out and getting Daniel Sprong right now, because I like we've talked about before. I think that if the guys internally can't do the job, I do believe the Bruins can find somebody at some point throughout the season that can score a little bit for them.
Right. I mean, like Fabian Lysell might be Daniel Sprong. Like we were just talking. Sprong, good skater, has offensive ability, defensive questions, questions about his all-around game. Like that's Fabian Lysell. Now, obviously, I get Sprong's done in the NHL and Lysell is not yet. But to Brian's point, like if you're giving anyone a chance who has those kind of questions in their game, I do want to see Lysell get a crack at it. So again, like I don't hate the idea at all. Like the more guys you can bring in who can put the puck in the net, the better. But I'm also like not gonna trip over myself to go sign Daniel Sprong, right after the Swayman extension gets done.
And we will remember to give full credit to Nathan if Daniel Sprong does sign with the Bruins. We will remember this. We will be like, wow, he knew it. And yeah, it was, it's a suggestion that I hadn't thought of before. And it's not terrible, so we'll see. It wasn't on our radar.
But I love that though. I appreciate the outside the box thinking. That's what the mailbag is for.
I do too. Because sometimes we're just, we're reading the rumors and we're going off that, but we're not like, going to the drawing board completely and trying to fill the holes. Maybe Nathan can help Don Sweeney and, just bring him some new ideas for what to do.
All right, guys. Well, that's the last question we have for this week. We appreciate all the submissions, wherever you sent them, YouTube, Twitter, emailing. We appreciate it. It's a summer for all of us, so I think we're all craving to hockey again. But in the meantime, there's no better way to pass the time than to interact with you guys and that's great. So we appreciate it. Bridget, Scott, any final thoughts?
August is going to be real bad for that, though. Like August, I'm going to be like, when is hockey season? This is crazy. That's when I start to get really antsy is sometime like mid-August.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because there's really nothing on the calendar. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe Swayman drags on that long. We didn't really get any questions about Swayman, which
we
a little surprised by. Maybe that's good. Maybe that means our audience is elevated and a little smarter and isn't panicking, as we advised people not to do on our last episode.
Yes.
But I mean, I think that deal's probably done before then, but maybe that drags into August. Literally the only other thing I can think of is usually we have a couple Bruins on at the Jimmy Fund Radio Telethon, and I'm like, we can get some content there, and that's kind of about it.
Yeah, well, usually Monty's on, and occasionally, he'll have an answer about how he plans on using Fabian Lysell, or how he plans on approaching preseason, which can provoke conversation a little bit.
Well, in the meantime, we'll have hopefully maybe some playoff baseball if the Red Sox keep playing this well to occupy us until the October.
Playoff baseball isn't until Bruins start.
Well, I know, but October. Yeah, I'm just saying, and then obviously the Patriots. Who knows what their expectations are? But it's always fun when the NFL is around the corner. That's that's pretty soon here.
We got Olympics, not
the Olympics is what's going to keep me going.
Yeah, not the winter version with hockey, but I love all things Olympics.
Thoughts on 3 Celtics being named to Team USA and Jaylen Brown not being one of them?
Yeah, surprising. I don't really fully understand what's going on there.
No,
why they just don't seem to like Jaylen Brown. But I saw something where the Grant Hill, who's part of the U.S. decision making team, made a comment about it's all about role players and you can't have everyone be a number one. And I'm like, but Jaylen Brown can also play a role. But anyways, we're not.
Yeah, Peyton Pritchard's role is clearly put him out there for the last 10 seconds of the half and just chuck a half court.
That's shot. 4 Celtics then. So it's 4 Celtics, not 3. Because you have Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Tatum as well.
But Derek White, I didn't even see in the picture that they took the other day.
But you don't have Brown, so it's only 3.
It is. Yeah, because Pritchard, I think, is, But anyway, yeah, no, I think it's not enough, Celtics, to be honest with you.
They should put Peyton Pritchard on the 3-on-3 team. It's crazy to me that 3-on-3 basketball is an Olympic sport.
Can Peyton Pritchard skateboard?
Wait,
maybe we get him a skateboard.
Is Pritchard not a Celtic anymore? Is he a free agent?
He is. He's not on the Olympic team, though.
Oh, he's not. Oh,
he's a reserve, isn't he?
No, he's not on the team.
Oh,
he's there. I thought Scott. He was there.
I'm getting my basketball news now from Bridget. Now it's
no. I promise you, he was okay. You can look it up.
I believe you.
They had the whole team practicing together, and Peyton Pritchard was there.
Well, he might have been hanging around asking for autographs, but I promise you, he's not on the team.
He's in the video. He's in the promo. I promise you, he's in the promo video. If he snuck in there somehow he's in there. I'll send it to you.
All right, you guys figured that off the air. I don't know.
By the way, you know what's crazy? I saw
like
someone mention on Twitter that had it not been axed, we would be getting ready for the Olympics in Boston coming up. This was the year we were aiming for.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Scott was mad because he would have gotten to watch the rowers come right by his house in Lowell.
Yeah. They would have been right down the street.
I'm sending you this, Scott, by the way, just so you know.
All right,
This video that Peyton
me-
Pritchard is clearly in.
That's
Let me-
someone's kid, Bridget.
Just wait. Just wait. There's Tatum. Wait for it. There he is. Okay? I'm not crazy.
So I think I do know what that is. Like, I think they brought in guys that they were scrimmaging against, because I saw Cooper Flagg, the stud from Maine, who's going to be like the #1 overall pick next year. He was there too, but they're not on the team.
Yeah, he was so posted up, like he was like, "That's right."
Well, we got down to that. We solved that mystery.
All
We
right.
solved that
I mean,
mystery.
someday he's gonna have that picture on. Like, he's gonna tell his grandkids he was on the team.
Oh, we'll have Terp on during the Olympics. We'll have Terp on.
All right. Well, for our Bruins listeners and followers, which is all of you, the Celtics talk is over. And thank you all for listening. Appreciate the questions, and we'll talk to you again soon. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.